Hi there. I'm here today with, well, what is one of my favorite animals on the entire planet. And I know I love a lot of different reptiles, but anybody who watches this channel a lot knows that I love this lizard more than almost anything. This is a yellow Ackie Monitor. I love Ackies. I don't just love Ackies, I love monitors, period. Monitors are arguably, and there's a short list of any other lizard groups that I could even make this argument at all with. Monitors might be the coolest lizards there are. The biggest lizards in the world are monitor lizards, and in a lot of places where monitors exist, at least as far as reptiles go, they are the apex predators. The quintessential example would be the Komodo dragon, but there are big monitors in a lot of different habitats, and they're so amazing. I mean, there's not phylogenetically, but as far as my imagination goes, they're as similar to dinosaurs as anything we've got today. They can run down prey and breathe at the same time, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but most lizards can't do that. It's stinking rad that they can. And they just look so cool. I don't know what it is about them, but it is such a cool look. But the truth is, and this is a sad truth, horrible truth, most monitors make really terrible pets. Sort of like most big cats. Stinking rad, terrible pets. Some monitors make bad pets because they're very difficult to keep alive. Some make bad pets because they will legitimately try to kill you. But some of them actually make pretty decent pets. But picking the right species can make all the difference. And for this reason, today we're going to talk about 6 of the best pet monitors you could possibly get. And I'm going to begin with this one, which is the Ackie Monitor. This one happens to be a yellow Ackie. In our video on Ackie Monitors, you see a red Ackie. Really, there's no major difference between the two. It kind of comes down to which color you prefer. I adore them both, and I would have a very difficult time deciding which one I like the most. They're amazing. I'm going to tell you this right up front, which is kind of a spoiler for the whole rest of the video. This is the best one. The Ackie Monitor is head and shoulders the best pet monitor on this list. Everything else is worse. They are a fantastic size. Now this one here is just a juvenile. If you want to see an adult, you should definitely check out our full video on Ackie Monitors. In fact, you should just check out our full video on Ackie Monitors. It's the best pet monitor you could possibly get. You can just skip the rest of this video. Just go watch that video. They're the best. They're just a perfect size. I mean, they're big enough that they're not super fragile. You're not going to hurt them very easily with handling, and that's awesome. But also, they're small enough that they're not going to hurt you very badly. I mean, you could still end up getting stitches from a really bad Ackie bite, but it's not going to be anything extremely serious like you could receive even from some of the other decent pet monitors that are on this list. Also, because they're small, they're not only not going to hurt you, but they're also more reasonable to house and more reasonable to feed. They're just all around more reasonable because they are an actually reasonable size. Like I said before, bites aren't going to be that bad. For a lizard the size of an Ackie, the bite's going to be actually pretty tremendous. I mean, monitors have some great teeth. They've got these very flexible necks, and so they can lay quite a wallop on you if they want to. An Ackie isn't very likely to do it, and just because they're small, it's not going to be as bad as if it were a bigger monitor. They won't tear you up as badly with claws as will bigger monitors, and the Ackie being a more terrestrial monitor, its claws aren't as sharp as some of the tree-dwelling monitors, and that's very nice. Also, this tail, which is very cool and spiky, they're not going to whip you with it like larger monitors will, and they can whip the heck out of you with that tail sometimes. They also can't drop that tail, which is true for all monitors, but I love that about monitors. Monitors are active lizards, super active lizards. I really can't think of a whole group of lizards that's more active than monitors. And as such, for their size, they need a lot of space. And Ackies are no exception, but because they are such a reasonable size, you can actually purchase an enclosure large enough for an Ackie. You don't have to have it specially built or build it yourself, and that's very nice. Also, because monitors are active, they eat like monsters. I mean, they eat so much, not quite like mammals or birds, but they eat a heck of a lot. And an Ackie, because it is a more reasonable size, it eats a lot for its size, but that's still not a whole lot. It won't eat you out of house and home. That's very nice. This monitor is head and shoulders the best monitor on this list, but they do still have some cons. One of them is they're expensive to buy. They can be a bit hard to find. There are actually a lot of people that are breeding them. This one comes from Great Basin Serpentarium, which is a great place to go if you're looking for a monitor of a lot of species. But they're awesome. Ackies are awesome. And so there's very high demand for them. And you might need to get on a waiting list if you want to get an Ackie. And that's a bummer sometimes because you want an Ackie today, of course. That enclosure, while it's cheap for a monitor enclosure, it's still pretty expensive. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Also, the lighting that you'll need for these guys is going to be expensive because they need a really hot basking spot. And on top of that, you're going to need UVB lighting. It just adds up. Like I already mentioned, the bite is nasty for a little lizard. It's a little lizard, so it's not that bad, but it's bad for a little lizard. And they're small, which is like the best thing about the Ackie, in addition to their rad personality. But it also means that for a monitor lizard, they're not all that impressive. When you pull it out, people aren't like, holy cow, is that a Komodo dragon? They're like, what's that cute little thing? And that oftentimes is not what people are going for when they get a monitor lizard. Also, their body shape, well, it's still a pretty good, like, goanna Australian monitor body shape. That tail, which I think is a totally awesome tail, kind of throws off their typical body outline of a monitor lizard. And so, while I think it's really cool looking, if what you want is a Komodo dragon shrunken down, that tail throws off the look a little bit. It's not perfect, but definitely the most reasonable and probably the most fun pet monitor you could possibly get. Next on our list of the best pet monitors that you can possibly get is the Timor Monitor. There are a lot of pros to these awesome little monitors. One thing is that they are a little bit cheaper to buy even than Ackies, and that's great. And also, by comparison to Ackies, they've got a little bit more of the kind of quintessential monitor shape. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, they've sort of got all the best looking monitor features all wrapped up into one package. They've got the kind of just basic monitor shape, but they've got the head structure and the coloration, a little bit of a Nile monitor, which is one of the best looking monitors there is. Horrible pet monitor, but a really good looking monitor. And then they're a little bit leaner and kind of lankier like the tree monitors because they are a semi-arboreal monitor. And they've just kind of got it all. And it's all wrapped up into a very convenient little package. They are a great size for a monitor. For starters, you know, they're big enough. This one is not fully grown just yet, but they don't get a heck of a lot bigger than this. And they are big enough that they're not super fragile, but at the same time they're small enough that they're not going to tear you up. And monitors can really tear you up. You know, even at this size, they can hurt you. I mean, a bite can be bad, and it's easy for them to bite you because they've got a very flexible neck. The claws on a little tree monitor like this, they hurt. The tail, one great thing, they're not really going to whip you with this tail, and that can be an issue with the bigger monitors. They can still hurt you a little bit, but because they're smaller, it's just not nearly on the scale of a bigger monitor. Monitors across the board, you know, like we've already mentioned, they're active lizards, and so they need a lot of space, which makes it so that really any monitor but a really small monitor needs a huge amount of space. These guys still need a big enclosure, but at least it's one that you can buy, and that's very nice. And also because they're active and they've got a really high body temperature that they maintain most of the time, monitors eat a lot. You know, we've already talked about this with the Ackie, but like the Ackie, because these guys are small, they eat a lot for their size, but that still isn't a whole heck of a lot of food compared to larger monitors. But they definitely have some cons. Really, all monitors have some cons. The smaller monitors have fewer cons than the bigger monitors, but there are definitely some for the Timor Monitor. I said that they're less expensive than Ackies, which is great, but Ackies cost several $100s, and so do these. just not maybe as many hundreds of dollars. They can also be difficult to find, especially if you want one captive bred, and you totally want one captive bred. Even though the enclosure is affordable for a monitor, it's still expensive. It's an expensive enclosure, so be prepared for that. Their lighting for a small lizard, pretty expensive because they need a hot basking spot, not as hot as an Ackie, but pretty hot, and they need that UVB lighting. Adds up. These guys are also very, very shy compared to Ackies. It means that they hide more than do Ackies, and they don't like to be handled nearly as much as Ackies. And those are major cons if you like to interact with your lizard. Like I said, even though they're small, their bite can still be pretty nasty. And also because they're small, like the Ackie, I mean, it makes them so reasonable, but it also makes them a lot less impressive than are the larger monitors, and that can definitely be a con for some people. However, this is a good one. This is a real good one, and from here on out, they're not so good. Next on our list is the Dumeril's monitor, and you guys know how much I love Ackies. I don't own an Ackie, but I do own a Dumeril's monitor. Mine happens to be the grumpiest Dumeril's monitor in the world, and he's still actually pretty fantastic. But this one comes to us from Great Basin Serpentarium, but I will show you some footage as well of my Dumeril's monitor, because I am actually developing a really good relationship with him. But this Dumeril's monitor is exhibiting a lot more the typical personality of a Dumeril's monitor, which, as far as bigger, more impressive monitors go, in my opinion, is the ultimate pet monitor. One thing that I love about the Dumeril's monitor is that they're big, but still manageable. I mean, this is an impressive enough lizard that when you pull it out, nobody's like, oh, look at that dinky little thing. They're like, holy cow, that is a big lizard. But this isn't unreasonably big, and what we're gonna see later on this list is unreasonably big. One of the most important attributes about the Dumeril's monitor, and actually the reason that I was originally interested in them, is that they do not tend to bite. Which is great because they've got really powerful jaws. They eat a lot of shellfish, and I can tell you, when I feed shellfish to mine, I mean, he just crunches right through really heavy-duty exoskeletons like it was nothing. It's amazing. But they are very not inclined to bite. Even my grumpy dude, not very inclined to bite at all. I don't totally trust him, which is actually probably the main reason I'm wearing a glove on one hand with this guy, is because I always wear gloves with mine, because I'm nervous about that bite, but generally speaking, they're not biters. They do well on a diet that is primarily made up of crustaceans and also some fish and things that are actually relatively affordable at the grocery store, which is very nice because those are the things that they tend to be hunting in the wild, and that makes them pretty reasonable for a bigger monitor. You are probably going to need to build the enclosure for a Dumeril's monitor, but because they're big but not astronomically big, that enclosure isn't going to take up like a big chunk of your house. I mean, it's big, but it doesn't need its own room necessarily. They are just one of the nicest monitors you can possibly get, except for mine, which is actually, he's just sort of like a typical monitor, except he doesn't bite. And I'm working with him, he's getting better. I'm sure in the future I'll be able to show him off to you guys more. I wish I could. But they are, generally speaking, just excellent. They're super cool looking as well. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned is hard to show on film, but the way that they feel is amazing. And mine, only recently has he gotten comfortable enough with me that I can come up and pet him and stuff while he's eating. But it's just, I mean, they feel like a really soft, scaly basketball, sort of. I mean, it's rubbery a little bit, but leathery a little bit. It's hard to describe, but it's one of the most amazing sensations. And, you know, I've never really felt too many other lizards that feel anything like this. And they look super cool. As babies, they're gloriously beautiful, but they quickly lose their baby coloration, which has like a bright orange head and some beautiful striping. They turn out more this sort of brown color, but the shape of them is just incredible. They've very much got that Asian water monitor shape, but then they've got scalation almost like a crocodile. They've got one of the coolest looking heads, kind of a very similar head to the Nile monitor, which is a terrible pet lizard, but it has a super cool looking head. I honestly adore these guys. That head shape and their personality is actually why I prefer the brown roughneck monitor, the Dumeril's monitor, to the black roughneck monitor. But that's also a pretty good option. These guys, though, they're just, as big monitors go, hard to imagine how you could do any better than this. But they do have some cons. They're great for a big monitor, but there are some cons. Those nails that they have are rough. We talked about how damaging the nails are on a Timor monitor. Well, that's a tiny semi-arboreal lizard. This is a pretty good sized semi-arboreal lizard, and this is the main reason that I am truly wearing the glove on one hand, is because when I need to pick him up, those claws can just shred ya. And so I'm making sure that I have something I can use to be protected from them, because, oh gosh, I've had some serious gashes from mine. I mentioned that they don't tend to bite, but if they do, those jaws are crab-crushingly powerful, and I do not want those wrapped around my body anywhere. They also are very difficult to find captive bred. They do crop up from time to time captive bred, but most of them are imports, and as a result, they're going to suffer from typical import problems. And we've got a whole video on that. They need a big water area. And not as big as the Asian water monitor that we'll talk about later, but pretty big, and large water areas are a pain in the neck to keep clean. Though they don't need as hot of a basking spot as a lot of the desert monitors, they do need a pretty hot basking spot, and being a big monitor, they actually are going to need a lot of lights. You don't want just like one super hot basking light, or they'll end up usually with a burn on their back, sort of right around where their stomach is, because they're trying to warm up their whole body using just a tiny, highly focused, super hot spot, and it just ends up burning one area of their body. So you're going to need a lot of basking lights if you have a Dumeril's monitor. And then on top of that, you're going to need some UVB basking lights, and that's going to add up for sure. The enclosure is definitely going to be something that you're going to have to build. I built the enclosure for mine when he was quite a bit younger, and it was epic then, but it's getting small, and I'm starting to think about my next enclosure for my Dumeril's monitor. They need a big enclosure, and you know, if you don't know how to build that, it's going to cost you a ton. Not perfect, but honestly, in my opinion, this is the best pet monitor that is impressively large. Of course, from here, they're going to get crazy large. And before we get to some of the biggest and craziest lizards on this list, I wanted to talk about some of the biggest and craziest, most wonderful people in our world, which are our patrons at Patreon. Thank you so much. I wanted to point out, at the end of all of our videos, we show, poof, up on the screen, all of our stinking rad fans. And, you know, that's just one of many perks that we have for our patrons as a way of just saying thank you. But thank you. You do so much for this channel. And now let's get nuts. Next on our list is the lizard I was honestly the most reluctant to put on this list, but I think they totally belong. And that is the Argus monitor. Now, this is a male Argus monitor, and males get quite a bit bigger than females, and he's a big boy. You know, some of the lizards we'll show you later are actually smaller than this guy, but they will get much bigger than he is. This is what I would consider a larger medium-size monitor. But this one, especially males like this guy, they're still impressively large, for sure. Though there are Argus monitors in Australia, most of them that we have outside of Australia actually come from New Guinea. As a result, most of them in the pet trade are captive bred, but there are still some imports. So when you get one, you definitely want to be aware of where it comes from, but they are widely available captive bred for a lizard that's as hard to find as these are. In a lot of ways, they're very much like a colossal Ackie that loves to eat. That sounds like a great combination, and in some ways it is, but we'll see in some ways that's also kind of a con. They are impressively large. I mean, no question, this lizard is impressively large. You pull this out and people go, wow, what a lizard that is. And I can tell you, honestly, this is the most nervous I've been behind this table with any lizard that wasn't an iguana. One of the things that I love about the Argus monitors especially is they do this thing called tripoding, where they stand up on two legs and look around like meerkats, except like a velociraptor meerkat. It's the coolest thing ever. They also definitely have that Australian monitor goanna look to them, which I love. You know, they're kind of more The typical monitor build then are the Ackies, because they don't have that spiky tail like Ackies do. And even their head and neck, you know, they're a little bit more slender and snake-like, more of a typical monitor build. The enclosure that you need for these guys, it's big because this is a great big monitor, but it is a fairly simple enclosure because these are mostly just a terrestrial monitor, and that's very nice. One of the things that you don't need is a huge water area, and you don't need nearly as much space for climbing. So a lot of floor space, but other than that, the enclosure is fairly simple. They definitely have some cons. All these monitors have some cons, and like I said, this is the one I was the most reluctant to put on this list. I already said they're like a giant food-motivated Ackie, and that sounds great, but actually being small is one of the biggest perks to the Ackie, and these guys do not have that going for them. Hey, dude. You're alright. Oh, crap. So, there are definitely some cons. These guys they're a big monitor, and they need a lot of ground space. So the enclosure for an Argus monitor is huge, just really huge. They also need it hot. This is a desert monitor, a lot like an Ackie, and so they need a extremely hot basking spot like an Ackie, but they're so much bigger than an Ackie that spot has to be huge, especially if you want to avoid burns. They have a feeding response like they've never been fed before in their lives, and they go for food hard. So target training is an absolute must if you're going to interact with your monitor in any way but throwing food in there and running for your life. When monitors start to get about this big, I mean, from here on out, the bite is going to be medically significant, which is why this has been a somewhat terrifying experience. And if you haven't seen it already, stick around for the bloopers because they're dandies. These guys eat a lot of large prey. They are going to eat some insects, but they're also going to eat a lot of vertebrates. And being this big and maintaining such a warm body temperature, they eat a lot of food. And they will remind you that they want a lot of food. This is definitely a lizard for people that are well-funded and highly experienced with monitors. You can see they're very expressive about their mood, and you gotta read these guys just right. So I would definitely not recommend this ever to someone as their first pet monitor. Get the baby version for a while. When you can read it perfectly and you lose your mind, maybe then you can go big. Next on our list of the best pet monitors is a truly enormous monitor. We've talked about a couple of really great small pet monitors, and they're fantastic. We've talked about some impressively large pet monitors, and then we get to the ridiculously large pet monitors. And in the category of ridiculously large is the blackthroat monitor. The blackthroat monitor that I have with me today is Oscar, and he comes to us from Utah's Reptile Adventures. And he is just a juvenile. He's basically as long as our table, but they get considerably larger than this and about 3 times as heavy as little Oscar here. The pros, I mean, obviously, the size of these guys. I mean, if what you want is an enormous pet monitor, this is an enormous pet monitor. Truly enormous. They have a great personality, and that is super important when you're talking about a giant pet monitor, because a bad personality would make these guys a completely unreasonable pet. They look super cool. I love the look of the African monitors. I mean, you know, I've always loved Savannah monitors. The Nile monitor is arguably my favorite monitor, the way that it looks. Of course, if you've seen our video on Nile monitors, not the way that they act, but I love the way that they look. That head shape of the African monitors is just amazing, and of all the African monitors, the blackthroat may have the most impressive head. That African monitor head is just so big and chunky and impressive, and the blackthroat monitor has got the biggest of these heads. And then on top of just being on a big lizard, I mean, they've got these big kind of venom glands that you can see is just extra bulbous, extra chunkiness. This guy looks like an Allosaurus, and there aren't many things alive that I could say look as cool as an Allosaurus. There's at least one other great pet monitor out there. That one requires an enormous pond. This one does not. That's a big pro. These guys eat large vertebrate prey, which is very convenient because when you are trying to feed a lizard that's 50 pounds, it eats a lot of food. And large whole vertebrates are considerably cheaper than trying to feed that, say, on hissing cockroaches. That would cost you a fortune. They're widely available captive bred. And, you know, this is really important because monitors that come in as imports just don't make good pets. Something else I love about these guys, especially by comparison to their cousin, the Savannah Monitor, is that we know how to take care of them. We get reasonable lifespans out of these guys. That's something you don't really see with Savannah monitors. We just don't know how to take care of these guys. We do know how to take care of blackthroat monitors. It's just intense because it's a giant lizard. And that gets us actually to the cons. These guys are enormous. We've said that the impressive size that these guys have is a pro, and it is, until it comes to taking care of them. For starters, being a giant pet monitor lizard. I mean, monitor lizards are dangerous for their size, period. And when you're talking a 50-pound monitor, it's extremely dangerous. Really could do you tremendous amounts of damage. They're also, because they're large, expensive to keep, everything about them is big. They're big, their appetite is colossal. The enclosure that they need is realistically a room in your house. The type of lights that they're gonna need, you know, it's just typical UVA basking lights and UVB, except you're just gonna need buckets of them. Just so many. So you're gonna spend a fortune on lighting. They're just all around super expensive to keep. They're also relatively expensive to purchase, which, I mean, if the cost of this lizard is what is discouraging you from getting one, don't get one, because the costs only begin there. But if you are okay with a very expensive and very friendly generally, but dangerous due to its size and host of weapons, if you're okay with all of that, if that's what you're looking for, then the Blackthroat Monitor might be the best pet monitor for you. But realistically, you should still get an Ackie. And last, but certainly not least, on our list of 6 of the best pet monitors you could possibly get is the Asian water monitor. One of the biggest reasons that the Asian water monitor makes this list is that they have a really terrific personality. Now, this individual is actually one that hasn't even been handled all that much, and you can see she's a very, very pleasant, wonderful little lizard. Very inquisitive, wanting to climb up on me. They're so alert and attentive, but they're so good-natured and fun. And that is super important when you're talking about a lizard that gets as big as these do. This is a female, and females tend to be quite a bit smaller actually, especially in terms of total weight, than our males. But she still has a lot of growing to do. Whoo, you startled me. You startled me with that tongue. You're such an inquisitive beast. These guys are, in my opinion, very much the quintessential monitor. I mean, they're an Asian monitor, and they've got the most perfect body build for a monitor. They've got that blade-like tail of the aquatic monitors, and yet they're stout and robust, and they are just incredible looking. They're beautiful. They look the most like the Nile monitor of any of the monitors on this list, and the big difference between these guys and a Nile monitor is really just that personality. These guys are relatively easy to feed. They're gonna eat a lot of vertebrate prey, a lot of things that you would catch in the water. They do well on a lot of fish, but a varied diet of all sorts of different whole feeders, and that's nice because that gives you a lot of options when it comes to feeding them, and mostly you just want a lot of balance. They are explorers though. But the water monitor definitely has impressive size. It's one of the biggest monitors in the whole world. Males especially get just absolutely colossal. If you want an impressive monitor, really, I mean, you know, there are crocodile monitors and Komodo dragons, but for the most part, it doesn't get any more impressive than this. Like I've already said, in many ways, they're a heck of a lot like a Nile monitor, except without that horrific personality that Nile monitors have. But there are some cons. These guys are gonna need an enclosure that's at least the size of a typical room. You know, and that enclosure is going to include land areas and areas to climb, but also an enormous water feature. They need a huge amount of water in which to swim, and they're messy. And a water feature on this scale with a big messy lizard living in it is just, it is such an ordeal. It is such an ordeal. They also need an enormous basking spot, and I've referenced this with the other lizards, but this is the biggest lizard on this list. And that basking spot, it needs to cover a lot of space. I've probably seen more burns on Asian water monitors than any other species because people get a really hot but too small basking area. And so this monitor tries to heat up its whole body from that little area, and they end up with a big burn on their back. Also, most of them that you'll find are wild caught, and there are definite issues associated with getting a wild caught lizard. So I would definitely recommend going to one of the breeders that are producing captive bred water monitors, even though that'll cost a lot more. Another thing, they've got a great personality, but if they bite you with a lizard this big, I mean, it's a medically significant bite. You're gonna need a lot of stitches, and it's gonna be a big deal if this monitor ever bites you. Good thing it's so much nicer than a Nile. You know, you're the best. We are having quite an experience, aren't we? The main thing is this one is very small, but Asian water monitors are just a colossal monitor, and even small monitors are a big deal. Monitors are just incredible lizards, and I'm so happy that some of them are at least moderately reasonable pets. Unfortunately, those that are reasonable are small and relatively unimpressive. The bigger you go with monitors, the more insane it gets. But if what you want is a truly insane lizard, there are some still sane, insane choices that you can make. And hopefully this video has helped you make a more sane choice about a monitor. We'll have full videos about each and every one of these monitors, and we've already created a playlist of monitors so you can see a lot of these sane for insane lizards and some just plain old insane lizards. Because monitors, they're nuts, but they're amazing. As always, like and subscribe. Oh, check out our other monitor videos, and we hope to see you real soon. I like having a glove I can defend myself with.
You gonna challenge him to a duel?
No, but like if he comes at me.
Okay. There's absolutely not much I'm gonna do if he comes at me.
Well, you're gonna pull him back. Are you not?
If he comes at me, no, I wouldn't make
No,
much
if he
sense,
comes if he comes at me.
Oh well, we'll see what happens. We'll just play it by ear.
This is the most I've felt like I'm interacting with an iguana of anything that I've been out with. You're all right. Oh crap.
Good.
No.
You're good.
I'm not
See,
really.
if I stand up too fast, I'll spook him.
Yeah, don't do
I might
that.
get him to stand up though. That might be neat.
Yeah, that would be neat as long as he doesn't stand up on me.
No.
Oh boy.
I noticed that there seems to be some sort of glove scale between 0 gloves, 1 glove, and 2 gloves.
Yep.
Is that?
I'll tell you my scale. 1 glove is it might bite me, and its claws are not fun. 2 gloves are it might bite me, and it's definitely gonna tear me up with those claws if I'm not protected.
Is there a 3 glove or like a leather apron?
Yeah, there's a point at which I'm wearing a bee suit.
Made of leather.
Yeah. That's for when I have a crocodile monitor on this table. Oh, why are you so great? Why are you so great? Oh my gosh, you're the best.
I can't.
They feel like rubber.
That's like it's for. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Never mind.
Don't make me laugh. This is serious business. Is my beard back on?
Is your beard?
Yeah, it fell off during that last segment. Did you notice that?
Your shirt changed.
No, same shirt.
Oh.
Same shirt, same tie.
Nice.
Beard just fell off.
We filmed a previous video.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling me. I was like, what? So good. So good.